Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into some really fascinating stuff today. Specifically, we're going to be looking at some aspects of the JFK assassination.
Always a rich topic, lots to unpack.
Right. So, we're going to zero in on Lee Harvey Oswald's time in New Orleans, and then, we can't talk about the JFK assassination without at least touching on the single bullet
Oh,
theory.
for sure. That's a rabbit hole all on its own.
Definitely. And our main source material for this deep dive is going to be issues of Dealey Plaza Echo. It's a journal published by a British JFK assassination research group.
Oh, I'm familiar with that one. They've got some really in-depth articles. They really get into the weeds.
Yeah, they really do. So
Yeah.
get ready for some real challenges to computer recreations of the assassination. And then also we're gonna be looking at dictaphone recordings and kind of get a glimpse into Oswald's personal life just a few months before the assassination in Dallas.
Sounds like we've got a lot to cover.
Yeah, definitely. So let's jump right in. And first up is we've got this article by Alaric Rosman, "The Single Bullet in Flatland," Part 2.
Okay, I've read that one.
Yeah, so Rosman goes head to head with Dale Myers' website, Secrets of a Homicide.
Yeah.
And, Myers is a big proponent of using virtual reality to represent the single bullet theory.
Mm.
And, I understand the appeal of VR. It's immersive, it's visually engaging. But should it be the sole basis for proving something as complex as the single bullet theory?
That's a great question, and it's one that Rosman really grapples with in his article. He argues that relying solely on VR to present this really controversial theory can be, well, it can be problematic. It's easy to kind of get caught up in the visuals, the flashiness of it all, and kind of just passively accept what you're seeing without really thinking critically about it.
Yeah, it's almost like the technology itself can hinder critical thinking in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Like imagine you're in this VR reconstruction, right? You're immersed in this virtual environment and you're being bombarded with all this information. It can be overwhelming and that can actually make you less likely to question what you're seeing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Rosman is really advocating for a more transparent approach. He thinks we should stick to simpler two-dimensional representations, things that are easier to verify, so that anyone who wants to and actually examine the evidence without being, kind of swayed by the immersive nature of VR.
So it's about ensuring that the evidence is accessible and easily scrutinized.
Precisely.
And Rosman doesn't just make this general critique of VR. He actually goes on to point out some very specific issues with Myers' approach. For instance, Myers claims that the single bullet had to deflect upwards by 13 degrees after hitting Kennedy to match Connolly's wounds.
Oh, right. The magic bullet bounce.
Yeah, exactly. And Rosman points out that this deflection, this upward deflection, it lacks a clear explanation, and it's actually disputed by most of the medical panel from the House Select Committee on Assassinations.
Yeah, that's a key detail that really casts doubt on the accuracy of Myers' reconstruction.
Another thing that Rosman takes issue with is Myers' language, which Rosman considers a bit vague, especially when he's describing these key details like the exact position of Kennedy and Connolly in the car at the time of the shooting. Why is that such a big deal?
Well, because precise positioning is absolutely critical for the single bullet theory to work. I mean, if Kennedy and Connolly weren't positioned exactly as Myers depicts them, then the trajectory of the bullet it wouldn't line up.
Yeah, wouldn't make sense.
Right. And Rosman argues that this vagueness, this lack of specificity, it's concerning. It makes it really difficult to verify Myers' claims.
Makes you wonder if Myers is intentionally being vague to obscure any potential inconsistencies.
It's certainly possible. He's choosing to ignore or downplay any evidence that contradicts his preferred narrative. And that's a big red flag for me.
Yeah, it definitely raises questions about whether we're really seeing the full picture or whether certain aspects are being, kind of manipulated to fit a specific agenda. And this isn't just about one little detail either. Rosman also highlights Myers' dismissal of Connolly's very consistent statements that he and Kennedy were hit by separate bullets.
Oh, right. Connolly told the Warren Commission like 5 times, I think, that his shoulders were turned, leftwards at the moment he was shot, not rightwards as Myers depicts it.
Exactly. And that's a pretty significant discrepancy. I mean, it goes to the heart of the whole single bullet theory.
And it's not just a matter of interpretation either. It's about acknowledging and grappling with the evidence even when it contradicts your preferred theory.
Yeah, you have to be willing to consider all of the evidence, not just the evidence that supports your preconceived notions.
Exactly.
Rosman also raises concerns about the lack of information regarding Kennedy's back wound. It was never definitively established if that bullet actually exited through his throat.
Right, and that's a pretty big gap in our understanding of the bullet's trajectory, which, as you know, is absolutely central to the single bullet theory.
Right. I mean, if we can't even definitively say where the bullet went, how can we say with any certainty that it was the same bullet that hit both Kennedy and Connolly?
Exactly. It raises too many questions.
So it seems like Rosman's critique of Myers' VR reconstruction really does raise some pretty important questions about how we use technology to try to understand history. It makes you wonder, how can we be sure that these reconstructions are accurate? And what are the dangers of relying solely on technology to try to interpret the past?
It's a slippery slope, that's for sure. Technology can be a powerful tool for visualizing and understanding historical events, but we have to remember that technology is only as good as the data and the assumptions that it's based on. We can't just blindly accept what we see on a screen. We have to be critical. We have to ask questions. We have to dig deeper.
We had to be skeptical, especially when it comes to something as complex and controversial as the JFK assassination.
Absolutely. And that's why Rosman's article is so important. It's a reminder that we can't just take anything at face value. We have to think for ourselves. We have to be willing to question even the things that seem obvious or self-evident.
Yeah, and I think that's a good lesson for anyone who's interested in history or really any subject for that matter. Don't just accept what you're told. Do your own research. Think critically. And be open to the possibility that things might not be as simple as they seem.
Couldn't agree more. That's the spirit of any good investigation.
Right. So let's keep that spirit alive as we move on to our next article. Now we're going to be digging into Chris Scally's article, The Dallas Police Department's Channel 1 Dictabelts.
Right. Possible
Signs of Duplication. And this one really gets into the nuts and bolts of those famous dictaphone recordings made by the Dallas police on November 22nd, 1963. The ones that captured all the police communications during the assassination and the aftermath.
These recordings are crucial. They're considered like the unfiltered audio record of that whole chaotic day.
Yeah, and they include the period when Officer J.D. Tippit was murdered as well. And those recordings are key to that whole debate about the acoustics evidence in the assassination, right?
Oh, absolutely. But here's where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
Scally's research, it raises some serious doubts about the authenticity of these recordings. And you have to remember, we're talking about 1963 technology here. The dictaphone system used by the DPD, it had this built-in 20-second overlap when switching between dictabelts. It was meant to prevent any loss of recording.
Kind of like a safety net.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure they didn't miss anything important. But Scally discovered something really peculiar. Early copies of the recordings, they show this expected overlap between belts 10 and 11, but the copies of belts 11 and 12 that are currently held at the National Archives, they don't have that overlap. It's missing.
Wow, that's a big red flag. I mean, that suggests that something isn't right.
Right, and this missing overlap, it raises these serious concerns about whether belt 12, the belt that was recording during Tippit's murder, whether it's actually an original or not.
So there's a chance that a crucial piece of evidence might not be what we thought it was.
Yeah,
that's a little unsettling, but it gets even more complicated. Scally, he managed to get hold of these high quality photographs of belt 10. And guess what he found?
Well, it can't be good, can it?
No, not really.
Yeah.
The manufacturing information on the belt shows that it was actually produced after the assassination.
Oh, wow. So it's a duplicate.
Yeah.
If belt 10 is a duplicate, I mean, what's to say other belts haven't been haven't been tampered with or replaced. This really casts doubt on the integrity of the entire dictabelt collection.
So what does this mean for researchers, for anyone who's trying to get to the bottom of what happened in Dallas? What do we do with this information?
Well, I think it means that we need to approach the dictabelts with a healthy dose of skepticism. We can't just assume that they're accurate and complete representations of what happened that day.
So basically we need to go back to the source material and double check everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we can't take anything at face value, especially when it comes to something as complex and controversial as the JFK assassination. We need to scrutinize every piece of evidence. We need to consider its source, and we need to be open to the possibility that things might not be as they seem.
All right, so we've gone from questioning VR recreations to questioning the authenticity of crucial audio recordings. What's next on our deep dive into the JFK assassination? What else do we have to grapple with today?
Well, buckle up, because this next one takes us deep into Cold War intrigue.
Oh, sounds exciting.
It is. We're gonna explore Mark Bridger's article, The Kirk-Newton Intercept, and this one delves into a really tantalizing mystery, a possible intercepted communication that suggests that someone knew about the JFK assassination before it happened.
Like they had foreknowledge.
Exactly.
Wow, that's something straight out of a spy thriller.
It really is. So picture this, right? Kirk-Newton, Scotland, 1963. Top secret RAF base, engaged in Cold War eavesdropping, listening in on communications across Europe. High tension, a world on the brink.
And somewhere in all that intercepted chatter, there's a hint that someone knew about the assassination before it happened.
That's the theory. Bridger's article centers on 3 letters that were written in the late 1970s that point to an assassination-related intercept made at Kirk-Newton. So the first letter, it's from an anonymous airman who claims he was stationed at Kirk-Newton in 63. And he describes intercepting a conversation about a plan to assassinate JFK weeks before it happened.
Hold on. So he's saying he heard people talking about killing the president of the United States.
That's what he claims. And he even says that he tried to report it to his superiors, but they dismissed it.
Wow. So did anyone take him seriously?
Well, there's a redacted Air Force document that confirms that Kirk-Newton was indeed intercepting the type of communications that the airman describes, but the document tries to discredit the airman by portraying him as an unreliable alcoholic. Classic attempt to smear the source.
Yeah, classic.
Yeah.
So we've got an anonymous tip, and then an attempt to discredit the source. What else do we have to go on?
Well, there's a third letter. This one's from the NSA to the FBI, and it acknowledges the airman's claims about Kirk-Newton's operations, and it confirms that the type of communications that were being intercepted. But here's the kicker. It also stresses that any dissemination of this information should be limited to individuals with appropriate security clearances.
Oh, okay. So now we're talking about potential cover-ups and classified information.
Yeah.
This is getting more and more intriguing by the minute. So what did Bridger do with all this? Did he just leave it at that?
No, he kept digging. He reached out to other Kirk-Newton veterans to see if they could, corroborate the airman's story.
And what did he find?
Most of them claimed, no knowledge of the intercept, but some of the responses were, well, they were intriguing, to say the least. They kind of hinted at a deeper layer of secrecy surrounding the events at Kirk-Newton. For example, one veteran, he cryptically stated that there must be a real good reason why the truth behind Kennedy's death hasn't surfaced yet.
That's a pretty loaded statement.
It is. And then another veteran who was on duty the night Kennedy was shot, he claimed that the base was shut down after the assassination, except for, essential operations, sudden lockdown, why?
Right.
Raises questions.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's like they're dropping these little breadcrumbs, but they're not revealing the whole picture.
Yeah, right. And Bridger did manage to get some more specific information. A cryptographer who worked at Kirk-Newton, he detailed the procedures for handling what they called critic intercepts.
Critic intercepts. What are those?
These were high priority intercepts. The kind of information that would be immediately relayed to the White House. I mean, think about it. If there was an intercept suggesting an assassination plot against the president, I mean, that would definitely qualify as critic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And this cryptographer, he questioned how such a sensitive communication could have been, mishandled or ignored.
Right. You'd think something that critical would set off all sorts of alarms.
You would. But then another veteran argued that if the intercept were genuine, it would have been known by at least 80 people on the base. He said that such sensitive information would have been widely circulated within the classified environment. So is he suggesting that the airman is making the whole thing up?
Not necessarily. It's possible that the information was compartmentalized, meaning that only a select few individuals were privy to it.
Mm.
That would explain why most veterans claim no knowledge of the intercept.
So we're left with a puzzle. We have an anonymous airman claiming to have intercepted a conversation about an assassination plot. We have official documents acknowledging Kirk Newton's intercepted operations, and we have other veterans hinting at a cover-up. I mean, what are we to make of all this?
It's a classic case of conflicting accounts and unanswered questions.
Yeah.
And the Kirk Newton intercept, whether it's true or not, it raises these fascinating questions about the nature of intelligence gathering during the Cold War and the potential for information to be suppressed or manipulated.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder what other secrets might be buried in classified archives. What other whispers from the past might hold the key to unlocking the truth about the JFK assassination. I mean, it's been over 60 years, and we're still uncovering new information, new perspectives, new pieces of the puzzle. It's amazing.
It is, and it just goes to show that the quest for truth and understanding, it's never really over.
Okay, so we've the controversial single bullet theory. We've dug into the mystery of the potentially duplicated dicta belts, and now we've delved into the world of Cold War espionage with the Kirk Newton intercepts. It's been quite a journey so far.
It has, and we're not done yet. There's still one more fascinating aspect of this whole story that we need to explore, and that's Lee Harvey Oswald himself.
Okay, yeah. So let's shift gears a little bit and delve into Terry Moore's article, Cruising About the Crescent City.
Mm-hmm.
Now this piece takes a different approach. It focuses on Oswald's life in New Orleans in the months leading up to the assassination. It's less about the mechanics of the assassination itself and more about Oswald the person.
Right. It's about understanding the man behind the myth, behind the headlines. Moore revisits key locations in New Orleans that are significant to Oswald's story. It's like taking a historical pilgrimage, walking in his footsteps and trying to understand what might have been going through his mind during those crucial months.
Yeah, I like that. A historical pilgrimage. It really emphasizes the personal aspect of this whole investigation. And it's a reminder that Oswald wasn't just a name in a history book. He was a real person living a real life with his own thoughts and feelings and motivations. We can't forget that.
Exactly. And Moore unearthed some fascinating anecdotes that really bring Oswald's time in New Orleans to life. For example, he recounts the story of Oliver, a former employee of Jack Ruby's Carousel Club in Dallas.
Wait, Jack Ruby, the man who shot Oswald after the assassination?
The very same. And according to Oliver, Ruby introduced him to Oswald at a nightclub in New Orleans just weeks before the assassination. And get this, Ruby claimed that Oswald was with the CIA.
Whoa, hold on. So are we talking about a connection between Oswald and Ruby before the assassination?
It would seem so. And that's a connection that's never been fully explained. If true, it adds a whole new layer of complexity to this whole story.
Yeah. It's like we're pulling on this loose thread, and it's unraveling a whole new layer of the mystery.
Right, and it makes you wonder what else might be out there. What other connections? What other pieces of the puzzle are we missing?
Exactly, and Moore also discusses the significance of Tulane Avenue in Jim Garrison's investigation.
Yeah.
Garrison was convinced that Tulane Avenue played a key role in the conspiracy surrounding Kennedy's assassination.
Oh, right. Garrison, the New Orleans district attorney, he was convinced that Kennedy's assassination was the result of a conspiracy, and he spent years trying to prove it.
Yeah, and according to more two hospitals on Tulane Avenue, Charity Hospital and Touro Infirmary, they provided reports that caught the attention of both local and federal authorities in the wake of the assassination. And we don't know the exact nature of those reports, but they were significant enough to warrant attention from Garrison's team.
That's right. And it makes you wonder what those reports contained and why they were never fully disclosed.
It's like we're seeing these glimpses of a bigger picture, but we're missing crucial pieces of the puzzle.
Right. And more, he highlights the importance of these seemingly small details. He argues that sometimes it's the seemingly insignificant anecdotes, the chance encounters that provide the missing links, the clues that can help us connect the dots and see the bigger picture.
It's all about paying attention to the details, even the ones that seem insignificant at first glance. Okay, so Moore's article, it culminates in a pretty poignant moment. He visits the Cypress Grove Cemetery where Oswald's father is buried, and we know that Oswald visited his father's grave just 3 days after returning to New Orleans in April of 1963.
It's a powerful image. Oswald standing there months before the assassination, perhaps contemplating his life, his past, his future.
What was going through his mind at that moment? We can only speculate, but it's a reminder that Oswald was more than just an alleged assassin. He was a son, a husband, a father. He was a complex individual shaped by his experiences in the world around him.
Right, and that's something that we often forget. When we're talking about these historical figures, we tend to reduce them to their actions, to their roles in these grand narratives. But they were people too. They had lives and families and dreams and fears just like the rest of us.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to remember as we try to understand the past, as we try to make sense of these complex events. We have to remember the human element. We have to remember that history is made by people, and that those people were just as complicated and nuanced as we are today.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the JFK assassination, I guess I just wanted to leave our listeners with a couple of thoughts. First of all, I think it's important to stay curious, to keep asking questions, to never stop searching for answers.
I agree, and I think it's also important to be open to the possibility that we may never have all the answers.
That's true. But I think that's okay. The search for truth is just as important as the truth itself.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. I hope it sparked your curiosity and inspired you to keep searching for answers.
Me too. It's always a pleasure to delve into this topic with someone who's as passionate about it as you are.
Well, I appreciate that. And until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
And keep an open mind. You never know what you might find.
Exactly.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
All right, so we've gone from questioning these VR recreations to now questioning the authenticity of crucial audio recordings.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder about the evidence we rely on to understand these historical events.
It does. Makes you think about the fragility of history, how easily things can be, manipulated or misinterpreted.
Absolutely. We have to be so careful about the sources we use and the assumptions we make.
Absolutely. So speaking of sources, let's move on to our next article, which takes us in a completely different direction.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Mark Bridger's The Kirk Newton Intercept.
I remember reading this one. It's a real head-scratcher. Lots of intrigue. It is. This one delves into a possible intercepted communication that suggests foreknowledge of the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a Cold War mystery here.
Espionage, secret intercepts, the whole 9 yards. Sounds like something out of a spy novel.
It does, doesn't it? The article focuses on a top-secret RAF base in Kirk Newton, Scotland, back in 1963. They were engaged in, Cold War eavesdropping, listening in on communications across Europe.
High-stakes stuff.
Definitely. And the theory is that somewhere in all that intercepted chatter, there's a hint that someone knew about the assassination before it happened.
Fascinating. So what's the evidence?
Well, Bridger centers his article on 3 letters written in the late 1970s that point to this assassination-related intercept at Kirk Newton.
Okay, so break it down for me.
All right, so the first letter is from an anonymous airman claims he was stationed at Kirk Newton in '63.
Anonymous, huh? Always makes you wonder about the credibility.
Right, right. But the airman, he describes intercepting a conversation about a plan to assassinate JFK weeks before it happened.
So he's saying he heard people talking about killing the President of the United States.
Yeah, that's what he claims. And he even says he tried to report it to his superiors, but they dismissed it.
Wow. Classic cover-up, right?
Well, it gets a little more complicated. There's a second letter, a redacted Air Force document, that confirms that Kirk Newton was intercepting these types of communications. But it attempts to discredit the airman.
How so?
It basically paints him as this unreliable alcoholic.
Classic smear campaign.
Exactly. Makes you wonder if they were trying to silence him.
It does. So what about this third letter?
Okay, so the third letter is from the NSA to the FBI. It acknowledges the airman's claims about Kirk Newton and confirms the type of communications they were intercepting.
Okay.
But it stresses that any dissemination of this information should be limited to individuals with appropriate security clearances.
So they're acknowledging the possibility, but they're also trying to keep it under wraps.
Exactly.
So what did Bridger do with all this?
Well, he did what any good researcher would do. He started digging. Reached out to other Kirk Newton veterans to see if they could corroborate the airman's story.
Yeah.
Most claimed no knowledge of the intercept, but some of the responses were pretty interesting.
Like what?
For example, one veteran, he cryptically said there must be a real good reason why the truth behind Kennedy's death hasn't surfaced yet.
That's suggestive, isn't it?
It is. And another veteran, who was actually on duty the night Kennedy was shot, he claimed the base was shut down after the assassination, except for essential operations.
Why the sudden lockdown?
Exactly. Raises all sorts of questions.
It does. So did Bridger get anything more concrete?
Well, a cryptographer who worked at Kirk Newton detailed the procedures for handling critic intercepts.
Critic intercepts?
Yeah, those are high-priority intercepts.
Yeah.
The kind that would be immediately relayed to the White House.
Like an assassination plot against the president.
Exactly.
So this cryptographer, he's basically saying that if there was an intercept like that, there's no way it would have been ignored.
Right. But then another veteran argued that if the intercepts were genuine, at least 80 people on the base would have known about it.
Because information like that would have been widely circulated. So who's right?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's possible the information was compartmentalized, meaning only a select few people knew.
That would explain why most veterans claimed no knowledge of it.
Exactly.
So what are we left with? We have this anonymous airman claiming to have intercepted a conversation about an assassination plot, official documents acknowledging the intercept operations at Kirk Newton, and other veterans hinting at a cover-up. It's a lot to unpack.
It is. The Kirk Newton intercept, whether true or not, raises all sorts of questions about intelligence gathering during the Cold War and the potential for suppressing information.
Definitely. And it makes you wonder what other secrets might be hidden away in classified archives. What other whispers from the past might shed light on the JFK assassination?
It's a question that's going to continue to haunt us for years to come, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about the single bullet theory, those dicta belts, and even international espionage. But now I think it's time to kind of shift our focus a little bit and talk about Lee Harvey Oswald himself.
Yeah, I mean, we can't really talk about the JFK assassination without trying to understand the man who allegedly pulled the trigger.
Right, exactly. And for that, we're going to turn to Terry Moore's article, Cruising About the Crescent City. Now, this piece takes a different approach. It focuses on Oswald's life in New Orleans in the months leading up to the assassination. It's less about the mechanics of the assassination itself and more about Oswald the person.
It's like trying to get inside his head, you know, see the world through his eyes.
Exactly. And Moore, he actually revisits these key locations in New Orleans that are significant to Oswald's story. It's like he's taking a historical pilgrimage, walking in Oswald's footsteps and trying to understand what might have been going through his mind during those crucial months.
It's a really interesting approach.
Yeah, it is. And it's a reminder that Oswald wasn't just a name in a history book, you know. He was a real person living a real life with his own thoughts and feelings and motivations. And more, he uncovers some fascinating anecdotes that really bring Oswald's time in New Orleans to life. For example, he recounts the story of Oliver, a former employee of Jack Ruby's Carousel Club in Dallas.
Wait, Jack Ruby, the guy who shot Oswald.
Yeah, the very same. And according to Oliver, Ruby actually introduced him to Oswald at a nightclub in New Orleans just weeks before the assassination. And get this, Ruby claimed that Oswald was with the CIA.
Wow, that's a pretty big claim.
It is. It suggests a connection between Oswald and Ruby before the assassination, a connection that's never been fully explained.
Makes you wonder if there's more to the story than we know.
It does, doesn't it? And Moore also discusses the significance of Tulane Avenue in Jim Garrison's investigation. Remember Garrison, the New Orleans district attorney?
Yeah, the guy who was convinced that there was a conspiracy behind Kennedy's assassination.
Right. And Moore, he points out that two hospitals on Tulane Avenue, Charity Hospital and Touro Infirmary, they provided reports that caught the attention of both local and federal authorities in the wake of the assassination. And we don't know the exact nature of those reports, but they were significant enough to warrant attention from Garrison's team.
Interesting. So we're seeing these glimpses of a bigger picture, but we're missing crucial pieces of the puzzle.
Exactly. And Moore, he argues that sometimes it's these seemingly insignificant anecdotes, the chance encounters, that provide the missing links, the clues that can help us connect the dots and see that bigger picture.
So it's all about paying attention to the details, even the ones that might seem inconsequential at first.
Right. And Moore's article, it culminates in this really poignant moment, his visit to the Cypress Grove Cemetery, where Oswald's father is buried. And we know that Oswald actually visited his father's grave just 3 days after returning to New Orleans in April of 1963.
Wow. That's a powerful image. Oswald standing there months before the assassination, maybe reflecting on his life, his past, his future.
We can only speculate about what was going through his mind at that moment, but it's a reminder that Oswald was more than just an alleged assassin. He was a son, a husband, a father, a complex individual shaped by his experiences and the world around him. And as we wrap up this deep dive into the JFK assassination, I think that's an important point to remember.
I agree. It's easy to get caught up in the theories, the evidence, the arguments for and against a conspiracy. But at the end of the day, we're talking about real people, real lives that were forever changed by this event.
Exactly. And I think that's why this topic continues to fascinate us, decades later. It's a reminder that history is not just about dates and facts. It's about people like Lee Harvey Oswald, whose life and actions continue to confound and intrigue us.
Definitely. And it's a reminder that the search for truth, the search for understanding, is never truly over.
Absolutely. So keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Until next time.